Welcome in to kick off the tip-off with Noah and Gage. A little bit more West Virginia football action for you today, folks. Looking into the defensive room for the Mountaineers this coming season, and seemed like a no better day to do this, Gage, in the sense that Zac Alley just had an interview, or let's go podcast setting, not really interview setting, with three guys before the game. Tony Caridi hosts that. Really good insight to Mountaineers, and they get a little bit more of the higher profile guys to come onto the show. So had a good interview, or like I said, podcast setting with Tony Caridi and Zac Alley today on the show. Gage, what are your first thoughts on that, just breaking into it?
I always love that sort of atmosphere when you get coaches and really kind of younger coaches like he is in college football, because you get a little bit more sense of their personality, right? You see him on there. He's talking about loves to buy Jordans and kind of some things that we relate to close. I feel like he's closer to our age and then the players on the team's age, obviously, than he is to Rich Rod, and that's obviously by no surprise. Rich Rod and Trickett up there in age, so I always like that kind of atmosphere. We get a little bit more sense of personality and who he is as a person and also a coach. So love it from that aspect. Yeah, I thought it was obviously well done. And I think it gave us a ton of insight into a video that you and I were going to record, and it only kind of helped our cause because let's be honest about something, Noah. The defense has been horrendous here recently, Mountaineer football, and this is going to be the guy I fully believe that kind of gets it clicking and back to going right, going better.
Yeah, Gage, just looking into what I would call the Alley file, looking at where he coached before, actually a two-time national champion with Clemson. Kind of got his first gig. They were student assistant and grad assistants at Clemson. Got his first coordinator gig at Boise State. Moved on to Louisiana Monroe, where he actually met Rich Rod. Rich Rod was the OC under, I believe it was Terry Bowden at Louisiana Monroe, and ends up meeting with Rich Rod there. Rich Rod brings him to Jacksonville State, where he gets his first defensive coordinator job. Obviously, we saw him last year under Venables at Oklahoma, which led West Virginia to poach him and get him back in contact with Rich Rod, back on the coaching staff. Gage, anything that kind of points out to you there on that little bit of, I don't want to say record, but kind of just his personnel file as a coach, anything that sticks out to you there?
He has been around some phenomenal football minds, specifically in the space of college football, right? You thinking about your time at Clemson, you're dealing with Dabo, obviously Rich Rod, Bowden, Venables. It's like he even mentioned in it, I try to be a coach who takes the best part from everybody that I've worked with. And when you're working with guys that talented, I think ultimately you're going to become a pretty good coach. And then before, I mean, this kind of ties into it, Noah. He also spoke about his time that he spent with the Panthers, and he has ties with Ron Rivera and worked with a really talented defense when he was there. So he got to see and kind of understand, A, how pro coaches work, NFL schemes, and then the players, right? He's able to adapt. Hey, if you want to be Luke Kuechly, or if you want to be this receiver this linebacker in the NFL, this is what you have to do, because he was working with those guys every single day. So I think not only, and this kind of factors in with his age, right? We haven't saw him at his peak as a coordinator. And this will kind of be his first real runaround of full time, because we know Rich Rod is going to kind of take the reins off and he's going to deal with the offense. I think we're going to see some special things just because he's fully going to be taken over.
Yeah, Gage, I think it's going to allow him to kind of explore exactly his identity. Not saying that he didn't get to do that at Jacksonville State, his first stint with Rich Rod, but Rich Rod, that was kind of his first big gig, right? Where he's coaching, he's in full control of it. But in the sense, Rich Rod probably still had the reins on him a little bit because he's new to the game. This year, you're going to see him kind of take over and be, whatever is going on in his mind. Obviously, he's going to clear it with coaches. He said it in the interview that he likes hearing, feedback from other coaches on the staff. But you're going to kind of see what Zac Alley's about this year with like no holdback. Like if he wants to blitz, he's going to blitz. He's going to show what his scheme, what he wants to do. And I think
style.
it's really, and just exciting to see that he kind of takes the approach that when he was asked today, what kind of rubbed off on him, what coach does he model after? And he kind of said he takes the best from all the coaches that he's worked with and it's kind of put that into one. And I think it's going to be really interesting because, like you said, the tree he has been around, the coaching tree he's been around, has been phenomenal, especially in the college football world.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, when you're coming, you look at our stats from last year as a defense, right? We allowed 33 and a half points a game, 420 yards a game, opponent third down conversion percentage 50, and then fourth down conversion percentage 73. And then the one that kind of stood out to me as a sore thumb, opponent red zone scoring percentage 93.18. And when you think of really good defenses, I always think of like NFL, like the Ravens days and the Legion of Boom with the Seahawks. It was hard to score on them in the red zone. It got harder inside the 20-yard line to score the ball. And that's why they were so successful as a group, because at a drive where they maybe hit a big play, 3-4 plays, you're inside the red zone, and then you go 3 and out and have to kick a field goal and settle for 3. You just give yourself so much more room in the game to win. And I think that those numbers are going to drastically improve because of his system and the way he's going to play. And I'll kind of let you get into why, right? You are kind of the X's and O's guy in here. So tell me why this is going to work and what Mountaineer fans can expect formation-wise and scheme-wise to improve on those numbers.
Well, I mean, if you look at Zac Alley's history and who he has been as a coach when he's had, all reins on the offense, he's kind of been a multiple defense guy. He likes to run the 3-3-5 or the 3-3 stack, some might call it. But he also doesn't mind to throw a fourth down lineman. Big thing he hit on today, Gage, was, kind of playing around his personnel, right? Designing things for his players to make a play. If there's a guy who can come off the edge really well, he wants to allow that to happen. If there's a guy who plays zone defense really well, a cornerback that plays zone defense really well, he wants to allow that to happen. I think the biggest thing you're going to see with Zac Alley, we can get into X's and O's, and we obviously know he's an aggressive blitzer. He's going to lay his cards out on the table and say, beat me, because he likes to make the other team uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially at the college level, when the quarterback doesn't know what's coming before the ball is snapped, it makes it very, very difficult to read that, especially when you have guys that are fast. And that's something that he said today he really focuses on speed, because the way football has adapted over time, speed is such an important thing. Back then, you could have a hefty linebacker, a big linebacker that can cover that A gap, right? Cover the dives, cover that. Now, that same linebacker has to be able to cover from sideline to sideline. And that's a big thing to point out. Zac Alley said he recruits it, right? Because there's one thing you can't teach. It's hard to take a kid from a 4.9, quote, this is what he said today. It's hard to take a kid from a 4.9 to a 4.4. But you can work with a 4.6, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to build speed, right? Same way here. I was never going to run a 4.4, Gage. It's not going to happen, right? I couldn't play in Zac Alley's defense, unfortunately. Right? just looking at how Zac Alley designs and schemes his players open to make plays. That's what I think the biggest thing in his success will be at West Virginia. Not letting guys get in front of the chains. If it's third, we don't want it to be third manageable. We want it to be third and long, so we know what's coming. And like a guy like Jamory Robinson's able to come free off the edge, or we're able to send a guy heat-seeking missile like Fred Perry off the edge. That's what you're going to see from Alley, and I think that is what will allow West Virginia to stay in front of other teams and, keep them on their heels at all times in the game.
Yeah, and that's what stood out to me was kind of the quote, players, not plays, was what he said. And I love that. I think really when you look from a defensive perspective, it's really in ways similar to offense, right? If you have a good receiver who is good in the intermediate level of the field, why would you never have him running routes towards that area of the field? It's no different on defense, where if I have kind of a hybrid safety like Fred Perry, why would I not play him closer to the line of scrimmage where he's going to be able to make more plays? Why would I just keep him in deep coverage, cover 2, stuff like that, whatever it may be? So I think that right now the process is him kind of identifying, okay, I know what you do well. I know what your weaknesses are. where can I put you to fit my scheme perfectly to allow you to have the most success? I think about that for Perry. I think about that for Robinson, Chase Wilson, a guy you like. And then another thing that I took away from that was if you're going to blitz, you better have some damn good corners who can play man-to-man coverage, right? You can run some zone blitzes, but I feel like more times than not, that's where you kind of get burnt just because there's less guys out in coverage. But if you have guys like we've said it before, Michael Coates, Derek Carter Jr., some other talented corners in this room that can go step for step in man coverage, it just gives you more time to get to the quarterback. And one thing I do want to mention, because everything isn't going to always be sunshine and rainbows, right? We're not going to see every week where we have 3 sacks a game, 5 sacks a game, stuff like that. There are going to be weeks where the the blitz doesn't get home and it really struggles. So what does that look like? And I guess kind of my downside and maybe a little bit of a fear is, what does this defense look like when the pressure rate isn't there, when the sacks aren't there? Are we a team that is just going to be giving up big play after big play because we're so kind of predicated on that working? Or, and I like what he kind of said about adjustability. One of them asked the question, he said something along the lines of, I never want to be out of bullets, right? I always want to be able to throw something at the offensive side of the ball, and never be out of ammunition. So I'm hoping that when it comes to one of those games where it's like, shit, man, we can't send 6. Like, they are killing us somewhere. Where does he adjust to make that switch that quick and keep us in those competitive games?
Essentially, like kind of what you're asking, Gage, because of his approach to the game, the way he's very aggressive with blitzing, kind of foreign looks, we'll go and say, or exotic looks, we'll say, is he going to be able to know, hey, we might need to go base defense here. We need to, maybe stop stand 6, play a stock cover 2, stock cover 3, with maybe some man underneath, something that's going to throw that quarterback off a lot, because there's going to be a quarterback that we play this year that is really, really good at identifying blitzes and where the pressure's coming from and moving his offensive line, adjusting them. And like you said, I think that's been a struggle for West Virginia in the recent years, is we blame all this stuff on the cornerbacks and the coverage, but we don't realize how hard that job is back there, playing safety, playing cornerback, if there are blitzes being sent and they're not getting home. If you can't get the quarterback, if he has all time to throw back there, it's hard to stay in coverage, 6, 7, 8 seconds.
And something that he said that kind of confirmed a thought that I've had for a long time, actually, is I think as kind of us who are not playing college football, things like that, we sort of overcomplicate. Like when we think of defensive playbook specifically, offense, I do think it's more diverse. You have a ton of formations, plays, all that stuff. But defensively, he kind of confirmed what I was thinking. He really said, we only have about maybe 5 to 8 plays or whatever it is. But within those 5 to 8 plays, there's about 10 or more things you need to identify to put yourself in the right spot to make the play and make the entire 11 as a group work. And I find that so fascinating, Noah, because if somebody is young and kind of an up-and-coming defensive coordinator like him says that, it puts into perspective of, while I'm not saying that calling defense is easy by any means, but from an offensive standpoint where you're trying to scheme up stuff, defense, it's kind of stock, right? There's really only so many things you can do. It's one part of the game of football where a lot of the stuff has just kind of been a staple. Your 4-3, your 3-4, your nickel, like all that stuff. And you kind of build on top of that and layer. But we see all the time every year with the offensive side of the ball, teams will come out in new formations all the time. And it's like, okay, what is this? So it feels like the offense is always ahead and the defense is trying to just keep matching up, and it'll forever be that way. But I found that really interesting, that his whole kind of standpoint is, we need these guys to understand that within our 5 to 8 plays, whatever it is, you need to be able to identify very quickly, okay, this is my job within this. This is what they're coming out in formation, everything like that. And I want you to touch on, he said something big, obviously a new thing coming this year for college football is the coach to player. Is there a correct way to call it what it is?
It is just essentially a microphone in the phone, microphone in your helmet, that allows the defensive coordinator, not a microphone, a speaker, sorry. Speaker in your helmet. And that happened last year. Last year was the first year of the coach to player system, at the collegiate level. It's been in the NFL for a while. But Zac Alley kind of hit on today that he thinks it's a little bit of a boost for the offense because if a coach is able to get his play call in early, he can look at the defense and the quarterback's not making the audible anymore. The head coach or the offensive coordinator, sorry, can make that audible on the fly because if he gets the play in, just say with 27 seconds, he can look at how the defensive team's lining up and he can say, "Hey, check this. We're going to run it left," or "Check this, hit the slant. It's going to be open because he's playing off." So on and so forth, right? So it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off the quarterback, allows the offensive coordinator to take over and step in, and the defense doesn't really have any way to adjust. But kind of in the same way you're saying, because everything's so base, so stock, it's kind of hard for a defensive coach to say, "Hey, look at this." Zac Alley did say he enjoyed being able to speak with the lead. I think it's usually the linebacker, the lead linebacker on the team, and tell him, "Hey, this is what I think's coming." That way, the linebacker has a little bit of sense of what he's thinking as the defensive coordinator, and he's not getting hand signs from the sidelines. But it was very interesting, and it kind of made me think the opposite way, Gage, of Rich Rodriguez. I mean, he's an offensive coordinator. He's been doing it for so long. When he sees a defense come out and stuff, I know he's going to be able to identify weaknesses in that defense. I think it's going to be very, very impactful for him as a head coach, being able to talk to his quarterback.
Yeah, and he kind of mentioned it right when they kind of split up in the OTA sessions that college football has right now. If a guy like Rich Rod is able to check plays like that, he kind of said 100% of the time he's going to beat you, and that you like to hear that, especially from a defensive coordinator. So yeah, I love that. And then no, kind of before we transition to the offensive side of things, where he kind of said. Trying to think of how to word it, but we'll get to it when we get to it. He had a specific kind of thing, right? Eight of the top 10 defenses in the country were top 12 in coverage disguise rates. So that leads into, I guess, where we're going to kind of hammer down on the defensive side of this and explain to fans, we are going to see blitz after blitz after blitz after blitz. And that is the style of defense that he wants to play. I think Mountaineer fans will be, first off, excited to watch that. You don't want to watch a defense like we've kind of been seeing just get gashed because maybe we're sending 3 or 4 and dropping back so many guys in coverage because we're trying to prevent the big play. He said second and 13s are easier than second and third, right? So early downs, we're going to see pressure. Second down, we're going to see pressure. Hell, even third down, we're going to see pressure. So take us in a little bit, Noah. Where do you see, obviously in his formations of 3-3-5 and just multiple, everything that he likes to run, where do you see him having success in terms of disguised blitzes, if that makes sense?
I think it comes from a perspective of looking at which quarterback you're playing each week, right? If you can identify what the weakness is of that quarterback, maybe he doesn't like throwing to the left side of the field as much as he does the right. Maybe he doesn't check his linemen into the correct blocking scheme to protect him in the pocket, and or if there's a tell on one of the linemen, one of these guys that says, hey, when he pulls this way, the play's, hitting this hole 60% of the time. What you're going to see is that tackle for loss rate and the sack, or even the quarterback pressures. People don't realize quarterback pressure is a big thing. If he doesn't have time to sit back there and make those perfect throws, that's when you're going to get a lot of the interceptions, those type of things. With his ability to change from a 4 front to a 3 front and his defenders be comfortable in that, it's going to leave the offensive line in itself very uncomfortable in not knowing, hey, each time I'm going to block the guy right across from me, or we're going to push this way because we're trying to help on Jamori Robinson, right? All these things are critical, and the thing is, it's hard to plan for a defense when a quarterback doesn't know what's lining up across from him play in, play out. So I think we will see a lot of tackle for losses, a lot of things to keep the opposing team behind the chains. But like you hit on early in the video, Gage, is something very, very big to point out. Sometimes that offensive coordinator can call the perfect play and hit a shot on you because you're bringing in something foreign. I think the difference between just for a Big 12 viewer, if you watch a lot of Big 12 football, you're going to see a lot of similarities to what Iowa State runs with those three high defensive backs, whether I think it's usually the safety in the middle of the field, maybe two safeties in the middle of the field and a cornerback, or two cornerbacks up, playing off the ball. You're going to see some similar things to Iowa State, but the difference is they're more of a keep everything in front of you defense, where Zac Alley's put your ears back and go get the football kind of defense. Something I want to hit on, Gage, and I think it's a very interesting take I have, in the sense of Zac Alley's a guy you want to take to Vegas, right? He's the guy you want to push. If he's got a good hand, if he's got a good feeling about something, he's putting all his chips in the middle of the table. Sometimes you're going to go home a millionaire. Sometimes you're going to go home with no money in the pockets, right? Mm-hmm. That's where I think Zac Alley is going to make his money, is being willing to lose on who he is, right? Having an identity and not letting that other team, like you said earlier in the video, just in the sense of always having something else for that offense to have to, prepare for, to look at, never running out of ammunition.
Yeah, Zac Alley is a guy, no, if you and I walked into the casino and played roulette, we look at each other, we're like black or red, right? You walk into a casino with a guy like Zac Alley, he's kind of more specifically black 8, red this, black, specific numbers. That's he's the type of guy I feel like. Yeah, I feel like that's how he is.
There's a 20 on the zeros. There's a 20 on the green.
every time, no matter what. So absolutely. And the beauty of, key word in this, disguise, right? It allows and opens up aspects of your blitz to maybe say, okay, hey, it looks like this linebacker, from an offensive perspective, it looks like this linebacker's coming off the edge, or this right here, we're checking it, and you snap the ball, drop back in coverage. And I think that's where we'll see turnover rate rise for us in a good way, right? I think we'll have a lot more turnovers as a defensive group, specifically on the pass side of the ball. I know I will probably bet my life. Yeah, actually, you know what? No, this is a perfect time to say this too, because I've been waiting to use this. Big takes require big things, right? So for my first big take of the year, well, probably second or third, we've had a couple, I will guarantee you at least 3 Fred Perry forced fumbles. That's my first big take of the day. Of the channel, I should say. Fred Perry guarantees you 3 forced fumbles through the run game side of things. All right. So then you kind of chip into the defense. I think we'll see a lot of turnovers just based off of quarterbacks being fooled. I really think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's something that Zac Alley is going to key on. He did say points per possession is a big statistic he looks at. It's because, whenever he made a very good point today when he was talking about the Army, Air Force, Navy, because they have such a high time of possession in the game. They have less possessions on the defensive side of the ball. So that's why their defensive numbers are usually skewed pretty high, because they're not playing defense as many possessions as such as a Rich Rod team, where his team's going to run 3 plays as fast as they can, 4 plays, 5 plays, and the other team's going to have the ball back. So points per possession is a big thing. But like you said, Gage, I think in the sense of turnovers, that's where you're going to see West Virginia make a big jump this year in a defensive statistic because of the disguise. I would go on the record here and say you're going to have 4 turnovers. We're going to create 4 turnovers within the first 3 games of the year.
I would believe that. Some of it due, obviously, to level of talent. But, yeah, I think it'll be a beautiful way to kind of experiment and get a really good feel and some confidence leading into, obviously, the Big 12 schedule and the big game versus Pitt. So it'd be nice to get off on the right side of things. I guess technically the third game will be versus Pitt, so in your take. But no, a couple of miscellaneous things before we get to the obvious question of the day. 2 things that I want to hit on, and then maybe if you have a couple. One being, he talked about their NIL model a little bit, how, and we really need to do a separate video about this, where college football is just adapting NFL standard. I mean, it's coming eventually. We're going to get a point where SEC and maybe other power conferences branch off into their and do their own thing. It's going to happen eventually. I truly believe that. But I thought it was interesting, kind of the aspect and way that they approach it, where everything obviously rolls through a GM now. That's fairly new in college football. 5 years ago, if you would have said hey, who's the GM of Texas Longhorns or who's the GM of Ohio State, you'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? But I found that very interesting, and actually, where they said that they break it up, similar to an actual NFL team, right? So you think of NFL running backs typically don't get paid a ton, which in our case that's not the case. I hope every single dollar of the what is it, the Country Roads Trust Fund or whatever, yeah, it went into Jaheim White's bank account. I hope that's the case. But safeties on the defensive side of the ball, stuff like that. So I found that very interesting. I didn't know if you had a take on that. It's coming, man. Eventually, we're going to see it fully adapt the NFL model.
Just to take on that, Gage, is I think Rich Rod was kind of ahead of the game in the sense of even earlier in the year before the universities got approved to pay players, he said he was going to adapt that model. Left tackle and quarterback's going to get paid a hefty check on the offensive side of the football, and he was going to leave money back for guys that maybe who he thought wouldn't be starters at the beginning of the season, and they end up playing a huge and or crucial role in the success of the Mountaineers. So I thought those were two very big points there, Gage.
Yeah, once again, same guy who around his first tenure, and why he left was he was fighting for more money for his coaches. So it's like he understands what's going on, and I feel really comfortable with him and the GM that we have now kind of running it from a team aspect the way it is now. And then my second one, Noah, that I found really funny in a way, but I completely understand why they are like this. From a coaching, in the interview today, he's nice guy, smiles, all that stuff, but do not get it twisted. Rich Rod and Zac Alley are assholes as coaches. I mean, complete assholes. And I mean that in the best way possible of it's a certain level of respect and tough love between player and coach where there is a certain standard to where we need to play. And if you are not meeting my standard, right, I have to literally force it into you. This is what needs to be done for us to be successful. It's not pretty. And honestly, over time, I'm sure it's kind of dimmed down. It would be, I'm sure some of the stories of the Pat White days and stuff like that Rich Rod to player kind of relationship is pretty tough. But I know at the end of the day that he really cares for his guys, and that's why he coaches them so hard. And it's funny to me to see Zac Alley kind of adapt that role because obviously working with him, and you're just going to kind of be, that's going to kind of be how it is when you're working around those sort of guys. But I like that he adapted that old school style of coaching because let's be honest about something, Noah, that works, right? Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, say what you want about his days with the Jaguars, but when he was at Ohio State, Kirby Smart, all of these guys are assholes as coaches. It's a no bullshit policy, no bullshit tolerance, right? And that's what makes you successful. And I think the Neil Brown era, we always say it too, right? It's never and never was anything against him as a person or as a guy. He was a great guy. Players loved him, but it's all about results. At the end of the day, it's wins and losses. It doesn't matter if you're a great guy. It doesn't matter. You have to get the win. So I think from a culture aspect, Neil Shiesty, the shirts and stuff like that, stuff's out of the door, man. We got a coach now. If you're making TikToks, I mean, you're going to probably be kicked off the team.
Yeah, Gage, I think that's something to really look at. And the best thing you kind of said there was like the level of respect. But whenever someone's pushing you to that limit, that Rich Rod and Zac Alley are going to, it's because they know you have the potential to be great. And that's why they're doing it. And I think that's a big thing in the player to coach relationship that has to come to fruition early, that they understand that the reason why you're being pushed so hard is because we know you have the ability to do this at a very, very high level. There's very few better talent evaluators than Rich Rod out there, getting guys that not very many people know of, and he's able to get them over the hump to being a big thing in college football. One I wanted to go there miscellaneous is Zac Alley's fiance. He said recent fiance. Actually lived in West Virginia 2 years ago before they got engaged and they moved to Oklahoma together. It was an Ascend West Virginia program, some kind of program West Virginia offers for remote workers to move to the state for 2 years and make some cash. I think it's like $12,000. I searched it up. So really interesting that there's always that tie back to West Virginia some way, one or another. We all know as Mountaineers, you go into a gas station in North Carolina, somebody sees you have the gold and blue on and says, oh, my grandpa lived there and I actually spent summers up there, here and there. My aunt went to college it always happens. There's always a West Virginia connection somewhere, no matter where you go. And I thought that was very interesting.
Let's be honest, Noah. This guy was meant to be a Mountaineer, man.
It
Zac
was.
Alley, Zac Alley was meant to be a Mountaineer. It was destined to be, and we obviously hope that he has the success to the point where when Rich Rod says, "I'm done, I've accomplished what I needed to, I'm ready to pass this thing on," he's the next guy up, and he's still in the coaching staff to kind of take over, because that's how highly we think of him, not only as a coach but as a person and leader too. So I think that's really important, and we're just excited for football season, man. It's got it. Days are slowly going by, but we're getting there. So Noah, unless you got anything else, man, send us home with you. You told me you had a good question of the day for us, so I'm a little intrigued here.
Okay, so for the viewers at home, just to understand Zac Alley as a defensive coordinator, he always wears bright poppy collars on the sidelines, so players are able to easily visualize him on the sidelines, able to see him, eyes go to him. At Jacksonville State, he always wore Columbia blue. They kind of talked about this today on the episode. Gage, he said he did not have a collar picked out yet that he was going to wear on the sidelines this year. What do you think he'll wear, Gage?
So key thing to think about this, Noah. You might have multiple options, because we know in the polo and kind of coach attire world of things now, we will see some white, we will see some navy, and from time to time we will see a gold polo from the coaches. That was more so kind of a basketball thing from the last previous coach that we had, who we do not say. But when you think of it from that, right, you can eliminate a couple collars that are too close to both navy specifically and white, what you have on, right? So I would eliminate all that. And I think this is my answer. I think I'd have to go red. I really do. I really do think I'm going to have to go red, because it's such a, we just you don't see red at all in the stadium. Obviously we're navy, we're gold and blue. And you'll get the hints of kind of gray from the seats, stuff like that. But you need something where, guys are looking over, we need something called, boom, red, man. I really do. That's kind of my pick. Are you thinking something different? I was going to say like pink, purple, something like that. But I mean, we're not playing with Barbie dolls, man. We're out here to take heads off and get the football back to Rich Rod.
So it's kind of funny and kind of going against the popping visual cue on the sidelines here, Gage, my take. But during the interview today, I believe it might have been TC, Tony Caridi, or Hoppy Kercheval stated that why not blaze orange, the hunter. But then I thought something different. Give him the camouflage polo with the Mountaineer on it, with the flying West Virginia on it, and that'd be different. Who else does that?
That would be different. Yeah, you don't see that at all often. I think so, now that we're talking about this in terms of sideline and kind of the wristbands, the signs that they throw up, right? Most times they'll have emojis, things like that.
Yeah.
I think we need a specific board for maybe 1 week at least, dedicated to West Virginia kind of food / it's things that are cultured in, right? One where with the 4 squares, it is Tudors, Keglers, Code, or whatever that club is currently called now. It undergoes a name change every 3 months due to obvious reasons. But and then something in the 4th spot, all
pepperoni roll.
A pepperoni roll, yeah, of course. Coal miner hat, maybe, I don't know, something like that. Yeah. Maybe we need to see that instead of the stupid emojis. I was never a fan of that. But yeah, man, good question of the day. I like that. Like I said, red. I like the camo take. That would be an interesting look. I wonder how that would, because I say you have to have something where guys can easily see it. So
if he wears camo and or red, we're taking credit that he got the idea from us. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that. And Noah, I mean, every day we inch closer to the season, that over 5.5, it doesn't help when you're seeing videos like this and get you fired up for football. That over 5.5 wins for West Virginia football is looking more and more of an atomic nuke for me come closer to week 1 kickoff at Robert Morris. So guys, appreciate you watching as always. Football season is coming, so just hang in there. We will probably dabble a little bit in basketball here soon, because while football is working and getting ready for their season, I know basketball is getting underway too, and they're going to start doing their thing, and kind of need to get fans accustomed to Ross Hodge and some of the new guys coming in. And don't get it twisted, man. Once West Virginia does their thing and we fully transition into that basketball period, I think fans are going to be really, really happy with the results that Ross Hodge is going to have in year 1. So as always, guys, appreciate you watching. Please hit that subscribe button. We will see you in the next one.